Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast. This is your host, Redbeard, and I am joined by the ever awesome Tom Eddlem. He is I'm very biased, my favorite economist at this point. But what can I say? I like the guy. He's a friend of mine, and he does a pretty good job, not just on here, but on his own podcast. And, you know, uh, I just have to say, I was talking with Tom just a minute ago, and to my Minnesota peeps. I was explaining how miserable it is, and my in Minnesota right now with the heat, and my house does not have air conditioning, so I have fans. I have a fan in the background. Hopefully, you can't hear it, but it's suboptimal, and so I made a terrible decision to drink coffee tonight. But I also have an ice cold energy drink just to take the edge off. So we're going to make it work. We will make it work. Tom was talking about how nice the weather was over there, and I got to admit I'm kind of jealous. But without further ado, Tom, great to have you back, man. And what have you been up to? If you want to tell people a little bit about who you are, for those that may not know who you are, and tell us a little bit about your recent exploits. You just did was it one or two new articles recently?
Just one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Tom Eddlem, the blue collar economist, and I write for the Libertarian Institute. Thus, the thing here, and the Libertarian Institute this past week published an article, "How the Economy is Rigged Against You," and it's a longer piece, but it sort of chronicles some of the ways, certainly not all of them, but some of the major ways that the economy is rigged on behalf of the billionaire class and against the working man. Now, that sounds like a socialist, but I'm a libertarian. So it requires some explanation. I don't want socialism. I don't want government stealing from billionaires and giving to the poor. But I also don't want what's happening right now, which is government taking from the poor and giving to billionaires. And that is happening on a massive scale to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars every year.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I have to say, watching your episode that you did on your podcast was actually pretty enlightening. And, the way that you kind of laid that out, and you're more than welcome to kind of talk about it a little bit here tonight, too, if you'd like to go off on that tangent. And, yeah, it is pretty amazing, everything that's surrounding that, and really just how much the average person just ends up paying out of pocket just for so many different things. And you covered a lot on your episode, but you hit on everything from to the poor, lower class, to the rich, all the way up to kind of everything in between as it pertains to mortgages and so many other things. And when you broke it down, I guess I didn't even realize how much was actually coming out, because I think we just get so used to the day to day that we don't really put much thought into it, right?
We don't. I mean, some of it we kind of see. If you're a smoker, most smokers have lower than average income. The cigarettes are heavily taxed. If you buy food, you kind of know, most people kind of know that we have food price supports, and federal government has this program to raise food prices, and we have to pay for the program. Then we have to pay for the higher food prices at the shop. And there's certain things we know. We know we pay income taxes. We know the payroll taxes are pretty heavy, even though they disguise about half of it. But the interesting thing is that I would say the majority of the transfer from working people to the billionaires is done off books. It's not done with tax dollars. I mean, quite a bit of it is. When you look at federal debt, they borrow the money and they give it to Elon Musk, and Elon Musk has taken over $38 billion in government contracts. And subsidies. So it's pretty easy to become a billionaire if the government gives you $38 billion. But most of it is off books. It's in the kind of thing that people don't even see in their paycheck. And by in their paycheck, I mean I'm not even talking about you look at your pay stub and you see, oh, they took out the FICA tax, they took out the Medicare tax, they took out the federal income tax, state income tax. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your wages being cut even before you get paid by means of inflation. And really, there are sort of two kinds of inflation. There's credit inflation, and then there's monetary inflation. Monetary inflation is generally what we measure with the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. And I've gone over this a little bit in one of our past shows, but it's at the very least hundreds of dollars for every working family every year for regular monetary inflation. And for young families today, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars difference with credit inflation when they purchase a house. Hundreds of thousands. Because what they did was the Federal Reserve suppressed interest rates. And when you purchase things in a market that are almost exclusively purchased on credit, and real estate is one of them, the market price is not so much the sticker price, but the payment price, your monthly mortgage payment. And this is the same for regular middle class homeowners as it is for billionaires. It's all done by the mortgage payment. So when you lower the sticker, the interest rate, the sticker price gradually goes up. Actually, it goes up pretty sharply just by a small change. And I've shown in my show, which I guess I should plug, right? Blue Collar Breakdown. You should go to YouTube /T Eddlem, Eddlem. See again the spelling right here. T for Tom Eddlem. And I've shown charts where a cut in interest rates will make a direct change in the sticker price of a home in a year or so. I mean, there's a lag time, but it's about a year. And I've shown a chart showing exactly that impact in every case over the last 45 years, except the recession of 2000 or 1990 rather, and the Great Recession of 2008, because if it's in a recession, all prices are going down anyway, so you can't measure it quite the same way. Anyway, that's a lot of money to transfer, and it's two billionaires. I mean, when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's they suppress interest rates from 2000 to 23, and then in 2023, the interest rates went up to about 5%, which is actually not even high enough, in my opinion. To the market rate would probably be a little bit higher, maybe not much higher, because the baseline CPI right now is about 3%. So it's a little bit less than 3%. And if you take that, I mean, not that the CPI is some golden measure of expenses, but if you take it as, okay, the amount of currency increase is about 3% over the last few years, and that's about right, then that's probably a good baseline for interest rates. Plus, if you invest, you've got to make some money, so it's got to be a little bit above that. So 5% is not terrible, for a rate, but it probably should be a little bit higher for homeowners. I mean, there's a history in 2008 of many homeowners going belly up. But a lot of people are convinced today that, gee, the problem is the interest rates are too high, not that the sticker price is too high.
Sure. Yeah.
And the sticker price being high is the main problem, not the interest rates. The interest rates, the problem is that the interest rates were artificially suppressed by the Federal Reserve Bank for 23 years. And as a result, the sticker price went into the stratosphere. And there, if you look at the news right now, one of the things that the stories will tell you is that the median house price is at a record high. And that's not really true. If you index it for inflation, house prices have been coming down for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, because interest rates have been bumping it down. But because of the underlying inflation rate, everything's going up a little bit. But if you look at the real price, the what they would call the inflation adjusted price. The housing has been coming down a bit, so it's getting better. But I think what's going to happen is that the billionaire class is going to demand that interest rates go back down because they don't want their properties being valued less.
Sure. Yeah.
That they control things thoroughly from top to bottom. So, without trying to repeat my own podcast, that's the best short summary I can give you. And let me give you one story. I think I did this on my podcast, but I think, a lot of people say, well, how do billionaires benefit? I mean, if all the money is devalued,
right,
wouldn't the people with the most money get hurt the most? And that's not true, because it's the people with the most assets who get hurt, who benefit the most, and especially the people with the most debt. And the interesting thing is, the poorer you are, the less credit you have, the less debt you can have. So take, for example, a billionaire real estate developer. He has title to $5 billion worth of property. He has $4 billion worth of mortgages, and his net worth is 20% of his properties. So his net worth is $1 billion. And he's going to get his tenants to pay his mortgages, and in a regular market, he might make a few bucks on his rent, and the tenants are going to pay off his mortgages over time, and eventually it'll be paid off, and he'll own the properties, and any rent that he earns would be his, and he could, a lot of small landlords traditionally did that, and that was their source of income in retirement, and it was a good way to become a millionaire. But the way to become a billionaire is a little bit different, because what you can do is, if you have underlying inflation and you've leveraged yourself, that 4-to-1 ratio where you've got, or 5-to-1, whatever, where you've got 20% equity in the property and 80% debt. Well, every time there's 3% inflation, though, that $4 billion gets a lot easier to pay. That's a forgiveness rate of $120 million a year. But let's say, for example, and this is what the Fed does, they do another trick. I mean, these are all currency tricks. This isn't the market creating a better product. This is all government manipulation by a non-government agency that's not accountable to Congress or the president or anything else. And let's say they suppress interest rates and double the value of real estate. And the same thing happens to a certain extent with the stock market and other asset prices. Well, some asset prices. What happens is, this billionaire who's got title to $5 billion and $4 billion in mortgage debt, suddenly his properties are worth $10 billion. So now he's gone from a $1 billionaire to a $6 billionaire without doing anything.
Sure.
Like, he hasn't added any value to the market. It's just a trick. He's sextupled his wealth. Now let's say he re-optimized on the 80-20 principle. He goes to, now with $6 billion, he can afford to buy $30 billion worth of properties, and he can have $24 billion in debt. That's the 80-20.
Sure.
Well, now if there's underlying 3% inflation, that's $720 million worth of mortgage forgiveness every year. And so he's almost, you think about, okay, originally he was worth $1 billion, and now he's going to get $720 million. Well, he gets an extra $5 billion for nothing. Now he's going to get $720 million a year. So he's almost going to double his original amount for nothing. Again, just a currency trick. This is not adding value to the market. And think about 2022, when there was 8% inflation. That's almost a $2 billion added valuation, not added valuation, but $2 billion in mortgage forgiveness, in a sense, that he would benefit from, the recapitalized at the $30 billion level. So, I mean, he's tripling. He could, in a year like 2022, he could triple his net wealth just because of underlying inflation. So that's how, one of the ways that a billionaire would benefit from these banking tricks.
Sure.
And the ones who lose are the young homeowners who have to buy a house at inflated prices, and the working people who have to go to the supermarket or the gas station or whatever, and they have to buy higher priced goods all the time, and they're constantly looking to catch up with their wages, but they never do because inflation is a constant.
Sure. Yeah. Uh, and there's actually a couple questions here, I think, during the duration of what you were saying. The first of which was by Mark, Centerline Systems, asking, does the Fed need to go? Why or why not? Thanks.
The Fed needs to go. Ron Paul is
100%.
right. And the Fed. Okay. It's interesting. I posted
Yeah.
I wonder if I could even present a tweet. I bet you I could probably present
You may be able to. Yeah.
I don't know if I have the document. I don't think I saved it in my files here, but
gotcha.
I in the last 24 hours, 36 hours, former chairman of the Libertarian Party, Nicholas Sarwark.
I was hoping you were going to bring this up.
Okay, he posted, it's really important that we let the Fed stay as it is. He would argue I'm not being fair, but I quoted his entire tweet.
Sure.
And the essence of it is this: the billionaire, like, what are the things I talked about in my piece for the Libertarian Institute? Maybe I should put the link in the chat here. But one of the things I talked about in the Libertarian Institute piece is there's a propaganda narrative that defends every billionaire, every way the billionaires benefit by saying, oh, this is important. And one of the big ones is, oh, if we didn't have the Fed, everything would be chaos. Everything would close down. The markets would never work. That's the line.
Yeah.
Even though America didn't have a Fed or any Fed central bank from 1836 to 1914.
We made 13, it work somehow.
Well, 14. Not only did it work, we became we went from a backwater country all the way up to the largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
And the most
Some
industrialized.
could say we prospered.
One might say. But I mean, the billionaire propaganda is just that. The fear of, oh, it'll be chaos. I mean, like, it's one thing to say, okay, we need to get rid of the Fed and do it right. And sure, I mean, it could be done badly.
Yeah.
I mean, we needed to get out of Afghanistan and Joe Biden did it badly. I mean, I understand that. But even if we got out of it badly, it would still be better than us not getting out at all.
Oh, for sure.
And it's because the Federal Reserve is that bad.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people have argued, well, we don't want Congress controlling the value of our money. And I think back to before the Fed, Congress did control the value of the money, and we had a gold standard. I mean, I'm not saying the current Congress is as good as the past ones, but the level of grift and graft in the Federal Reserve right now is so great that the risk is very small that it would get worse. And the benefit is we could throw them out. Like, that's one of the things that if Congress takes direct responsibility for it, we kick them out. I mean, and they take the economy. We can just elect a Javier Milei or a Ron Paul, and somebody would do it. But there's that fear, and it goes back all the way back to I remember when I went back to school, again, for your viewers who are new to me.
Yeah.
I got my undergraduate degree back in the 80s, and then went on with life. I did a bunch of different things, and I always wanted to go back to school, and I could never afford it because for 11 years I was a Catholic school teacher. The pay was terrible, and I could never afford it. So I finally decided I'm gonna go back, and I could make more money doing my summer job as a trade plasterer than I could as a Catholic school teacher. So I did that. I went back to school, got my economics degree. And one of the things I noticed was there's in the textbooks, the macroeconomic textbook that we had to
Mhm.
use in macroeconomics, and it was by a Harvard professor. I'm trying to remember his name, but he was a Republican Keynesian. He had advised President Bush, and it was pretty much a standard stock macroeconomic textbook.
Mhm.
But one of the things he had said was, well, if you look at the history of countries that have an independent central bank versus those where the legislature runs the central bank directly,
Sure.
then the countries with an independent central bank tend to do better. But what they don't measure it against is a country that has a gold standard or some sort of a solid,
Oh yeah.
a solid
Yeah, that's
currency.
true.
They measured it in terms of how much inflation there was. Well, how
Right.
much inflation was there when we had under a gold standard? They don't measure that.
Right.
And I think that's that's kind of they do data, but they only do the data that they want to do. They don't do the data that
Yep.
actually exists in
Yep.
history. And that's the problem. And that's what we run into. And a lot of libertarians, surprisingly, even in the Libertarian Party, have that same fear, that have adopted and internalized that billionaire
Right.
propaganda fear. Because I posted it in a Facebook chat, Facebook group, and a second former chair of the Libertarian Party had said, "Oh, we don't want Congress running it. That would be dangerous." I'm like, "No, we want to get rid of the Fed. No, we want to get rid of the Fed."
Oh,
But it was
yeah.
the same fear. Like, their idea was, okay, we have the Fed now, but if we get rid of the Fed, it'll be worse, not better. And
Right.
there's no evidence of it. I mean,
Well,
and if it did get worse, we kick the bums out and we elect somebody better. I mean,
right.
that's what it should be. But instead, what we've got is a Federal Reserve that is insulated from and makes policy regardless of who's in Congress. And
Yep.
when they crash the economy, they throw the bums out, but the new bums come in and it's the same people and they have the same policy. It doesn't matter. When they crashed the economy in 2008, yeah, it went from the Republican rule to the Democratic rule,
Mm-hmm.
but the same interest rate suppression and transfer of wealth from the working people to the billionaires continued,
Right.
just as it had before under the Republicans. Nothing changed. So we threw the bums out and nothing changed. And people are looking at the red flag, like the bull in the in the Spanish bullfighting thing. They're looking at the red flag, not at the man behind the red flag. And that's what the Fed is doing. They're saying, "Oh, look, throw the bums out, charge at the red cape, and people do it, not realizing that's not going to change anything. We've got to gore the matador, and the matador is the Federal Reserve.
Well, and I think when you step back and you take a look at it, I think the significance of getting rid of the Federal Reserve and having Congress in the position, I mean, after all, they also oversee the purse, or at least they're supposed to. Lord knows Congress has delegated so much of their authority away. It's kind of hard to say what they're doing anymore, but they're supposed to have control of the purse and so many other aspects. And the plus side is, without the Federal Reserve, the one benefit that you do get with Congress, like overseeing all this, is we don't elect, the U's and I's don't get to elect the Federal Reserve chairman, right? That is an appointed position. Now, granted, one could say, well, we elect the person that would appoint them. That's not good enough for me. I don't like that. I like knowing the fact that we have more skin in the game of being able to directly affect the people that screw over our financial and economic system, versus just electing a guy that's only just going to put somebody else that's practically the same person in the chair. And I think that's I think that is the big argument and the big benefit right there. Like, why to argue against the idea of having more potential control over
Yeah.
particular system is kind of asinine to me. And
Yeah, and it's interesting. The people who most campaign, we got to
Yeah.
defend democracy from
Yeah.
Trump or whatever. We got to defend democracy. They're the ones who they they sound like democracy, the god that died.
Yeah.
Hans Hermann Hoppe. Whenever
Yeah.
the Federal
Yeah.
Reserve comes up, but otherwise they hate Hoppe. They don't want any popular input when it
Right.
comes to money, even though the U.S. Constitution clearly says Congress has the power to coin money and
Yeah.
regulate the value thereof. What branch of the federal government is the Federal Reserve? Is it legislative, executive, or judicial? It's neither,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's officially a private organization
That's its own
chartered
thing.
by Congress. It's unaccountable.
Yeah.
It's unaccountable, and that's the way they want it. That's the way the billionaires want it, and that's why it is the way it is until we demand otherwise.
Right. Yeah, and it's, really, oh gosh, and it's crazy because I responded to I responded to exactly the post that you did this morning. And for the life of me, I can't even remember my own response, but it was something about the idea of like, it's just like, well, in fact, the creation of the Federal Reserve did in fact create consolidation and more control and all of these other things. And it's like how most people can't like see how that became a factor. And then you have, so many of the same people that gripe and complain about like how terrible things are. It's like, well, you know how you start to fix that? By not just having an entity that exists that has that much control and power and has no oversight by the American people at all, but is merely overseen by a person that we elect to a point. Like I said, like that's not good enough. Like to me, the Federal Reserve and you and so many other people agree with this, right? Like should be done away with. And then you'll have people like, well, what do we replace it with? Nothing. That is the thing. You don't replace it with anything.
I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand at all the whole idea that it's decentralized. This is what Nick Sarwark, the former Libertarian Party chair, said.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and I know what the argument is. The argument is, well, they've got 12 branches.
Yeah.
Well, by the same token, that means the U.S. Army is decentralized because they've got bases all over the country. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. None whatsoever. It's all propaganda. Like that was the propaganda from the beginning too, by the way.
Sure.
The idea was they didn't want one single central bank. So they said, hey, let's create 12 branches and then we'll call it decentralized. Even though the New York branch really runs things and the Federal Open Market Committee.
Yeah.
And the other ones just follow orders. And it's amazing that people still fall for this propaganda 112 years later, because it's so obvious that it's not true, that it's decentralized. Admittedly, Nick Sarwark is a tool. I mean, he's just a tool of the federal government, and he doesn't propose anything libertarian. But I mean, as far as objectionable federal agencies, the Federal Reserve is one of the most objectionable, maybe the most. I don't know. There's a lot of fertile ground in there to object to, but it's up there. I mean, it robs from the poor and gives to the rich. It's a reverse Robin Hood agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like there's so many things that could be said about the Fed, and it should go away. Should never be replaced with anything. And that tweet that you kind of commented on via repost. I don't know the guy, but I looked at that and I'm just like, I may not know this guy, but that kind of said a lot to me. So I was like, this is the level of what we're dealing with. All right. Yeah. Roger that. Sounds good.
All right. Here's a question here in the thing. So, from David Endert. So is it better to rent at this time with how the economy is going? And the answer to that, and I might put my economist hat on, it depends. I mean, if you're in a three 3% mortgage, it's better to stay or,
Sure.
in your house. It's better not
Right.
to sell your house and rent. But I think as a general rule, if you wait a couple of years, you're going to get a better deal in real estate because right now we have the worst of both worlds. We had 20 years of interest rate suppression, which spiked the sticker price, and then they jacked the interest rate up. Now the sticker price is going down a bit, and it's going to go down more if they keep interest rates up. Because right now housing is just unaffordable. Like there's a lot of people that are home stuck, and we discussed. I discussed this in my podcast Wednesday, but I think what's going to happen is they're going to bring the interest rates back down. The billionaires will demand it, and that will make the housing payment more affordable for most young families. So if you're looking to get into a house and you're not in one currently, it probably is wise to wait a year or two.
Okay.
Until either interest rates go down, which is more likely, or prices go down, which is less likely. Yeah. But one of the two will happen. That's why the housing stock, for a short period of time, there was no housing stock. When they raised the interest rates, nobody could afford a house.
Sure.
And nobody wanted to move. So there was no housing stock. But eventually people have to move. So they put their house on the market and expecting to get a really good price, and it just sits there and sits there and sits there. And that's where we're at right now. And so either the price is going to come down or the rate is going to come down. And my prediction is politics will win and the rate will come down. So if you're a young person thinking I'm never going to be able to own a home, wait a year or two. It's going to get better. And if you recently bought a house and you're thinking, I don't know if I can afford this, whatever, you're going to have a chance. I think you're going to have a chance to refinance in a year or two at a much lower rate, because I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Tom Eddlem is providing a little bit of hope, a little bit of light at the proverbial end of the tunnel, potentially. So it's strap in.
But here's the thing, the grift continues, right? I mean, because what that's going to do is send the sticker price back into orbit or keep it up there when it should be coming down to earth. What they should be doing is holding the interest, just letting the interest rates go market ways, which means they'll probably creep up a little bit more. And that means sticker prices will come down. And that means the payments will come down. They're going to come down either way, but they will come down in the sense that you'll be paying more interest, but you'll be paying on a lower amount of the loan, which means if you put more, in the old days, especially, I mean, when I was growing up and a little bit earlier, in the 80s, a lot of people were getting mortgages for 15, 17, sometimes even 19%.
Sure.
And the first thing they would do is if they had extra money, they'd put it on their mortgage. Now the prices were really low, the sticker prices. But it means they could pay off their mortgage faster.
Right.
Right now, I mean, I told my daughters, they have mortgages in the threes, I think. I said, don't ever pay your mortgage off early. Don't ever, because why would you? 3%, it's inflation. It's basically not paying any interest. Why would you pay back a no interest loan?
Right.
I mean, that's basically what it is. So there's better ways to invest. You can put your money in the stock market or Bitcoin. It's probably better to putting in lottery tickets than it is to pay off your mortgage. That's how bad I'm exaggerating, but I mean, it's not a good move when inflation's 3% and your mortgage is 3%. Right. Because you don't gain anything.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's it's great information and great question, David. Really appreciate that, and I appreciate all the people that do offer questions and stuff like that, because I'm here to tell you now is the time to do it when I have Tom on here, and so if you guys do have anything else, don't be afraid to throw something in there, and we'll try and answer that as we go along. So Tom, I know part of the conversation that I wanted to try and get after today, it's kind of an interesting one, which is economic warfare. And I know like that that phrase, I think a lot of people think of warfare and they're just like, oh, it's bombs and bullets and all of these different things, but there's actually different types of it. And when you look at economic warfare, it's something we've done through our time as a country. We've done things like sanctions, and you could look at things like tariffs and stuff like that as perhaps an example of different tools that could be employed. We've also done embargoes. And there's a number of different things that we can talk about. But before we get into that, I am curious, and I was thinking about this after I kind of pitched the idea. In your mind, what would be the definition that you would kind of use to explain economic warfare to people?
I think the United States. Well, I'm surprised at this topic, but I think I'm prepared to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
The economic warfare is something that the United States engages in, just as we engage in regular warfare and information warfare.
Mhm.
Economic warfare. The idea behind it, as the United States sees it, is the United States has to remain the primary economic power in the world.
Mhm.
And it has to remain a unipolar world run by the United States, which it certainly was in the 50s and 60s, 70s, even into the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, in 1946, over 40% of all the world's GDP was produced by the United States.
Sure.
I mean, that's, we came close to producing half of the world's stuff. That's unprecedented in world history.
Yeah.
Okay. And the policymakers in Washington are still living off that legacy, thinking we can still do it. And the way to do it is maybe pump us up, but also keep the other countries down. That's the idea. And like you said, they use sanctions. The sanctions are more, the sanctions aren't really for economic rivals, though. I mean, if you look at, the economic rivals to the United States, who are they? China is the number 2 economy in the world. Europe is, if you do the whole EU together, they're a slightly larger economy than the United States is. But you've got some sizable economies there, with Germany and Britain and France, and of course Japan. There's some of the emerging economies like India. I think India just passed Germany as the fourth.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure India is kind of getting up there, right?
And India, I think they will be a major player by the end of this century. I think they will be possibly the largest economy in the world by the end of the century. I mean,
wow.
They've been hampered. Well, I mean, it's just to look at the population alone. I mean, they could make, if their GDP per capita per person was half ours, they'd have more than double our GDP. Because they have a billion, 1.4 billion people, and their population is going up. China, on the other hand, their population is going down pretty precipitously. So I don't see them long term as being an economic rival to the United States.
Right.
Of course, I don't see economics as a zero-sum game. I'm an economist. I'm a free market economist. I think when two parties trade, they both benefit. Otherwise, they wouldn't trade. So I'm against economic warfare. And there's this idea that, well, we've got to put tariffs in because a lot of other countries are subsidizing their exports and they're taking all our jobs. But and a lot of people think, oh, it's common sense. And it used to be, everybody rejected that because they understood economics. But just take an extreme example. Okay. Let's say the Japanese government decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make it so that every American can buy a car for $1 for almost for free. And we're going to do it for years on end. Well, that's a tangible, and what would happen? Well, all of the American auto manufacturers would probably go out of business.
Sure.
And every American would buy a Japanese car, and the Japanese would have all the automobile jobs.
Sure.
Who'd benefit? Well, you could measure the benefit, right? I mean, what's the average automobile payment? $400, $500, something like that per month.
Something like that.
So we would benefit by $400 to $500 a month, and the Japanese consumer would lose by $400 to $500 per month. That would be the thing. The jobs, I mean, like it's take it, or even take it on an individual level. All right, we don't have to do, you don't have to do it on a national level.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're a family, okay, and you have a brother. All right, your brother David gets a job, and he buys a car, and he's paying off the car, and he gives you the car, and he makes all the payments. Who's better off? You have a free car and no payments.
Right.
Is it you or David? He has the work. He has the job. Yeah. It's common sense, right? Yeah. You are better off. All right, not him. But for some reason, when we do global economics, we think, oh, well, it reverses that way. It doesn't. I mean, if you do an extreme example, I think I said this on the show once before. You do an extreme example. Okay, let's say Japan said, all right, every American could buy a car for $1. Every American could buy a plane for $2 and a boat of any size for $3. All the American jobs would go over there, and we'd be better off in flying our planes and driving our boats or whatever.
Right.
And that works on December 6th, 1941. Not so well on December 7th. So you could argue that, eventually there could be some military implications.
Sure.
But we're not there. Like part of the problem is the other country has to be able to bear that burden of subsidies.
Sure.
And America's a large country, and they would have to do it not just for America, but for the world. Because let's face it, if you gave Americans free cars, they're going to start reselling them to Canadians and Mexicans for half the price, right? I mean, Japan is not just going to be able to do it for just the American market. The Japanese consumer or the Chinese consumer just doesn't have that kind of wealth. And there is no other economy that could do it. I mean, maybe America could have done it in 1946, but that's it. There's just no dominant economy in the world that could do anything close to that. Right. So I'm not worried about that. And besides, who's going to attack America? Who's going to invade Minnesota? Who's going to invade Massachusetts? Nobody. Everybody knows that. Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous on its face. So I dismiss those kind of arguments out of hand. But a lot of people think, hey, if your brother buys you a car and he works for the money and pays for it, then he's the better one off. You're not you who gets the car. It doesn't, that's the logic with the Trump tariff people that they think, oh, well, if the jobs go over there. No, that's not true. It just means that we'll be doing something that's more productive because we don't have to work for the free stuff we're getting or the subsidized stuff we're getting. Yeah. So that's the beauty of the free market, that, if a foreign government wants to subsidize something, we'll take the subsidy and do something even better and more lucrative. And their consumers lose. And the idea that a lot of people say, well, they're taking our jobs. No, they're not taking our jobs. They're giving us free stuff. And that's the way it works.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting to me. And you do a really good job of being able to frame and paint a picture in a way that, like, I haven't even thought of. And I thought that was a good explanation as to kind of how that situation plays out and where you have the different thought processes. And I'm scrolling here real quick through the comment section, and I saw that Centerline Systems had a pretty interesting question. And I think it was something that is definitely fielded to you. So if you'd like to kind of expound upon that too, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, BlackRock, obviously, not a good company. They control, I don't know how many $1 trillion are worth of assets,
Yeah,
and and they do have market power. A lot of the one of my friends from back in the '90s, Jim Sheehan, wrote a really good piece, and I wish I remembered the details on it. He wrote a peer-reviewed article for I think it was the Journal of Austrian Economics about
Mm.
the about BlackRock and how they were able to use their market power and a few others to promote the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI thing. So they do have that market power, but the thing is, the more they exercise it, the more they lose their customers. Yeah, because they're not going to earn
Sure.
as many profits. So it's one of those balloon things. The more they squeeze, the tighter they squeeze their hand, the more that slips out of their
Right.
fingers thing.
Yep.
So I'm not worried about it, something like BlackRock, unless they have government regulations protecting them,
Hmm.
which they do. And I'm not an expert in that part of it, but
Sure.
and I read Jim Sheehan's article, and it was really good, and it did go over some of these issues. And it was probably, I don't remember how many years ago it was. It was a couple years ago. He showed it to me fairly recently, but but in that sense, BlackRock is concerning that they're tied
Sure.
in with government agencies. But
Yep.
as far as a single company using their market power, I mean, I grew up where everybody thought IBM is a monopoly and they're going to control all computers for all time.
Right.
And IBM is not that big a player, and it was the same thing with Polaroid, and then Kodak for
Oh
film,
yeah.
and like
Yep.
there are these companies that come and go, and yes, some of them have shown some staying power.
Hmm.
Apple and Microsoft are still huge companies, but a lot of them just fade, even as they look like they have monopolies, because
Right.
the markets change, or they're mismanaged, or something like that. So I'm not super concerned about the companies on their own having that kind of market power, but more about government regulations giving them that market power. Let me give you one example. And it's not a tech related thing. It's slaughterhouses. All right.
Oh.
For many years, there were only 4 slaughterhouses that did mass slaughtering of cattle and
Hmm.
pork and chicken across the US. And the reason was the regulations are very heavy. Like, if you slaughter even one cow or one chicken and sell it on the open market, you have to have a full-time paid USDA agent present while you're
Yeah.
doing the slaughtering. And that's expensive because you have to pay for him.
Sure.
And as a result, there were only 4 mass slaughterhouses in the entire country, the entire US,
Right.
for many years. There's one that opened. There's a 5th one that opened this year. I think it just opened. They had to raise $300 million to open it. That's
Holy
a
crap.
regulatory hurdle that is it is insurmountable for most
Sure.
family farmers and even larger farmers. But a bunch of them pooled their money and decided, hey, we're tired of taking it from these 4 companies that were in cahoots with each
Right.
other, jacking up the prices. So the 5th one is going online, but even then, now there's only 5. There's no reason why there shouldn't be 500 or 5,000. I mean, it doesn't make
Right.
any
Yeah.
sense. Except the 4 or 5 companies really like the fact that there are only 4 or 5 companies, and they have their internalized lobbies within the U.S. Department of Agriculture. In fact, you can go on their website, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's website, and you'll see the U.S. Cattlemen's Association, and it's funded by your tax dollars, and it's a lobby to promote more regulations on beef and on pork that raise your prices. That's how it works. So that's how so I'm going back to my article that I published, even though I didn't mention this. See, that's the thing. Like there's so much corruption from top to bottom, and it always favors the billionaires. Regulations always does, even back to the old days when they passed the the Antitrust Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act, back in the 1880s. The first trust they busted was a labor union. They didn't even bust a company. All right. They didn't go after Andrew Carnegie and his steel monopoly. They didn't go after Rockefeller. They went after a labor union, because that's what government does. When regulations are meant to keep out the competition, not to help the people, as a general rule. So I mean, there's exceptions, there's some of the fire codes probably are at least nominally supposed to stop fires. But I mean, for the most part, billionaires lobby for regulations that benefit billionaires, and they find an excuse that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
And the politicians go along with it because they get donations. And I mean, I know I sound like a leftist here saying the billionaires are billionaires, I sound like Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders has it all wrong, right? I mean, he's
for sure. Yeah.
Well, and my senator, Elizabeth Warren, yes, I'm from Massachusetts. She says, well, we've got to tax the billionaires. We've got to tax them.
Yep.
No, well, first of all, you raise the income tax on the billionaires. Billionaires don't pay income tax. All right. As a general rule, they don't pay income tax. They pay capital gains tax. That's what they do. And generally they don't even pay that. They just keep their money invested. And when they have a couple $1 billion, they take out a loan against their investments. So they don't have to pay it until, for almost forever. That's what they do. Sure. They take out a loan, and then that's a tax deduct. The loan interest on the loan that they have taken out from themselves is tax deductible. I mean, it's just, they've gamed the system. Okay. So they don't pay income taxes. So they could raise the income tax to 2,000% over $1 million or whatever, and the billionaires would be just fine. So we don't have to worry about the billionaires. I mean, I don't want the billionaires being robbed. I don't. Right. I just want them to stop robbing working people. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. And, as you were going through everything that you were saying, I just kind of thought about, we kind of kicked this off a little bit on economic warfare. And I'm like, my goodness, it's not even like, we do other countries dirty, but it's almost like economic warfare on just us, like when you kind of break it down, it's like you look at so many of the regulations, you look at the Fed, you look at all of these different control mechanisms, and then you factor in like trying to buy a home and trying to do all of these things. It's like, holy crap, dude, other countries might have it rough with some of the buffoonery that goes on in DC, but in the end of the day, like regardless of how it all pans out, whether it's something against another country or something domestically, like we end up getting the shaft either way.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we shaft other countries. I mean, like one good example of recent economic warfare is the pipeline between Germany and Russia that got blown up.
Yeah.
That the purpose of that was American oil companies or natural gas companies wanted to be able to sell their natural gas to Europe. So what do? You blow up the competition. I mean, that was it. And so they blew up the pipeline, and guess what? We're selling natural gas to Europe. I mean, there's a lot of that going on. So in that sense, there's economic warfare. But a lot of times it is, as you say, just they're warring against. It's the billionaires warring against the peasants, and they don't care where the peasants are. They can be Americans, they can be another country. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I want my billions. That's what it is. And they are willing to use government to get it. And they do use government to get it every time. And that's why, as a libertarian, I want to make government a lot smaller.
Yeah.
And ideally, maybe if we could get away with no government at all, that would be great. But I'm a classical liberal. I think that probably we couldn't do that as a practical level. But let's see how small we can get.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you'll find no argument from me, and I don't think you'd find an argument much in that way from most of the people that watch the podcast. And I kind of had to chuckle too about this the messed up situation about getting, dealing with that pipeline and the attack and all of the other things. And I just the other day I was listening to an episode from Daniel Davis and off of his podcast, and it was interesting. He brought up a couple times. He's like, the U.S. really likes to go out of its way and talk about, how they're trying to get it to where they have these deals and we're going to be the main gas supplier and we're going to, and there's going to be these trade deals and all of these different mechanisms that are going to be into place to where we can kind of consolidate a little bit more power. But he's like, but what everybody's forgetting, and the reason why, especially they have such an interest right now in India, and you see the tariff. I think they're up to like a 50% tariff on India now. And he's like, well, it's because India buys a ton of like Russian oil and gas, for instance. And he's like, and what they do is I think it's like 40% of the Russian oil and gas they get, they'll sell it to Europe. So he's like, you have all these people that talk about not buying Russian gas and everybody's buying the Russian gas. And he's like, but that's the thing they don't want to tell you. So in reality, like, that's why they're, so attentive to India right now, because they understand that. They just don't want you to understand that. And this whole facade of like, oh, there's nothing going over there. It's like, no, there's a lot of buyers out there. And they're really trying hard to kind of undermine it. But, you had mentioned that India is really becoming kind of like an up and coming economy and their ability to trade and the deals that they have. And they kind of, they're already in a position after this extra 25% of the tariff move or it got bumped into. They're already to a point to where they're just like, yeah, you know what, like we might start rethinking a lot of different things. I think they are starting to look over at different contracts with Russia as it pertains to fighter jets, because they were looking at the F-35. Now they don't. They're just like, yeah, you know what, we're going to shelve that for a while, and we're going to look at the Su-57. And it's we're pretty content with the oil and gas that we're getting. So it is kind of interesting to see how all this plays out. And for good or bad or indifferent, I find it probably a little bit more intriguing than some people, and I'm sure that it's somewhat intriguing to you. But I just thought that was funny though, because we went in there with this whole idea of like, we're going to really disrupt things, and you have these the leadership in Europe that especially like Ursula von der Leyen, who's like, we're not buying Russian gas, and then meanwhile you have all these people just buying it through India anyways. So I guess
and they're paying more for it. I can't believe how much Germany cocked to America. I mean, like that was an attack on the German pipeline, even though it was though Russia had built it.
Yeah,
it was an attack on the German economy, and they just went along with it, and they helped cover it up. They could have just exposed it and said, look, we're not falling for this, but they do whatever we say because they're still in our thrall for some reason. But that's not going to remain long term, I don't think. I see a multipolar world coming.
Yes.
With regional powers, you've got Europe, which is a regional power already. And a lot of people talk about Russia. I don't see Russia as they as a military power. Sure, they are, but as an economic power, they've got a collapsing population, not just because of the war, but because they just don't have a replacement level, just like Europe, but worse. And the same thing with Japan. Japan is,
Yeah.
I think Japan is the worst population pyramid of any country.
Oh
That
yeah,
I'm
they're
aware of.
not doing well right now. Like
I
not by a
mean,
lot.
I don't know if you know what I mean by population pyramid. Like the traditional idea is, you have the oldest people on top and then the youngest people in the bottom. And
Yep.
typically it looks like a pyramid because as
Right.
they get older, they die off. Well, Japan's looks like this. There's
Yep. Yep.
almost all the people are old and almost none of them are young.
Yeah.
And China's is like that. Europe is like that. The United States is not, mostly because of immigration.
Hmm.
Uh, India's is not. So
Yeah.
you kind of look at like these countries, okay, where are they going to be in 40 years?
Right.
Yeah, even if they have great economies, they're going to be small in population and they're not
Yes.
going to be the kind of powerhouses that you might otherwise expect. So I
Mhm.
think going forward economically, Indonesia is going to be much bigger than Russia.
Yeah. Yep.
Indonesia's, one of the, I think after the U, they might even have passed us in population. I'm not sure,
I
but
think they're close.
yeah, they are close,
Yeah.
and they're growing pretty precipitously, and Russia's, they've already beaten Russia, and their economy's growing pretty well. I mean, they still
Yep.
have corruption, but I see Indonesia as a major player in the future.
Yep.
India may be the number one economy in the world at some point. Certainly they have lots of experts and they have, I mean, if you go, a lot of their best people have come to the United States. I had one of my professors at Boston College was a native of India. He was great.
Mm.
They it's interesting. Like on immigration, there was a guy, Stefan Molyneux, and he was like, "Oh, we don't want
Oh yeah.
Indians coming to the United States. The average Indian IQ is 79 or 80 or whatever." And of course, a lot of that's nutrition and stuff, and IQ is a very
Hmm.
fun thing. But if you look
Right.
at the ethnic group, by ethnic group, they've done studies. The only ethnic group that has a higher IQ than Jews in America is Indian Americans. And it also is one of the highest income groups. So we've sort of poached all the top Indians who
Hmm.
could just as easily go back to their countries, their home country, if it sets its economic policy straight, and
Right.
bring India, into the into the 21st century, into the superpower status, really,
Yeah.
as a co-superpower with the U.S. What's holding them back is they're still terribly poor at this point. And even though they've got 5 times the US population or 6 times the US population, they've got 1/10 the per capita GDP. So
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
what's holding them back.
Yeah. you know, I guess it's interesting when you look at how long everything has been kind of like on a unipolar kind of tilt. And I do think you are starting to see that break up. And I 100% agree. I think it's absolutely, we are heading towards a multipolar world. Like it or hate it, I think BRICS to some degree it is a factor in that. And I also think it doesn't help that Europe, especially right now, and you kind of hit on this, but Europe is in a weird situation to where I think some of these countries are really starting to reconsider their status in something like the EU or NATO. You've seen a lot of this come from just how Slovenia has been, Hungary. I mean, Hungary is fortunate to have Viktor Orban. I don't agree with him on everything, but certainly he's a rational mind over in Europe right now, along with Fico and some of these other guys. It's not just them, but they are really good examples of countries that are not wanting to remain in lockstep with this apparatus that is the European Union, because they're starting to realize, like, well, if we do, like, the EU is going downhill. they're not doing very well in many ways, and they're like, we need to start trying to look ahead and see how we can kind of salvage our situation before it becomes too late. And I think Poland is also another one of those countries too, to where they've become I think the more and more, despite the fact that they're part of the EU, I think they've started to kind of distance themselves a little bit and start to run on their own game. So it's interesting for me being an outsider to see kind of how just even like the economic or like the politics of it all starts to play out. And I think you're starting to see a shift there.
Yeah, certainly Brexit was a shot across the bow, and other
Yeah.
countries quite possibly could go that route. They I mean, Europe, like Japan, like
Yeah.
a few other countries like Israel, well, Israel more, we do what they say rather than the other way around. But generally speaking, Europe, Japan, a bunch of other countries, the British Empire, what's left of it, Australia, New Zealand, they do what we say. They still do what we say. That's not going to continue. That's not going to continue. And they all are facing, almost all of them are facing the same kind of demographic collapse that China is facing and Japan is facing.
Yeah.
I mean, Japan has a sovereign debt crisis that's going to explode on them in a couple of years. But the Europeans have a debt crisis that's looming as well. And they're, it's interesting to see the different tracks that the European countries are pursuing to avoid the demographic collapse. Hungary is encouraging more childbirths. I don't know if it's working. Sweden and Germany decided, hey, let's have immigrants just like the United States and Australia and Canada. But it'll be interesting to see which countries are half the population in 80 years and which ones have maintained it or increased their population.
For
sure. The United States is increasing its population because of immigration. And it's less than 1% a year. I think in the last couple of years, it was like about 1% or maybe a little bit over, but as a general rule, it's a little less than 1% a year. But that's
sure.
You think about 330 million. Well, 1% of that is 3.3 million. That's a pretty substantial amount.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I think the United States is going to be fine economically and demographically. We're fine. Militarily and technologically, we're at the top still, and will remain at the top. I mean, economic collapse doesn't always, or the end of superpower status is not always catastrophic.
Right.
We can look at Britain in the 1940s, and they lost their superpower status, and they're fine. Spain lost theirs really in the 18th century, and they're okay. I mean, like they didn't have this catastrophic collapse. So the fact that the United States is not going to be the world's sole superpower, it doesn't alarm me,
right?
Because let's face it, the rivals to the U.S. is geographically keep getting further from the United States.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was Germany in the 30s, and they're 3,500 miles from us. And then China, they were about 8,000 miles from us. Now it's India. It's like, it's about as far as you can get. So I'm not really worried about Gurkhas coming to the United States and having Red Dawn, but against Indian Gurkhas. That's not going to happen. And the same thing goes for the Chinese in the near term. That I don't see it. I just don't see. I think there's a lot of fear over it, and it's unfounded. If you look at their technological abilities, their military, their economic abilities, their demographics. So they're like, if you look at the whole package, they're going to be major. China's going to be a major player on the world stage forever, because it's a big country with a huge population. Even if they go down by half, it's still got a lot of people, and it's still going to be a wealthy country. And the communist government, it's not the same communist. It's not the Joseph Stalin communists that were there before. They're bad. They're just like any other corrupt dictator at this point. It's not. I mean, Joseph Stalin had a a global conspiracy, a Comintern, where he was trying to conquer the world, and he had infiltrators in every government. And the Chinese have spies like we do, but it's
Oh, for
not the
sure.
same
Yeah.
thing. It's not the same thing that it was
Yeah.
in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So
Well,
I'm not worried about that.
you know, and I kind of like what Mark was saying here too. Is that technology can shorten distances, and that is a possibility. Yeah, I mean that is definitely an outcome. Um, and one thing that I think too is when you think about where our place in the world is, and I really kind of liked how you framed and painted this picture, this idea of you know, so what if we're not like the dominant superpower? Like like we could still be great. Like we can still be great in our own
Mhm.
ways. We can still do a lot of fantastic things. If we have some actual legitimate competition with somebody that's up and coming, like that may actually be a decent thing and kind of like push us along to want to do a little bit better versus just maintaining like a sense of stagnancy or falling into mediocrity. Like it's not, I do think that there is this obsession that we see where you have people that are just terrified of the idea that the United States is not going to be at the top of the roster. And it's like, like to some degree, I'm like, I'm kind of okay with that, like it's okay. Like if we just like kind of bring it back a little bit, do some reevaluation, kind of look at how things are, and maybe just get some consistency and really kind of work on a few things. And then maybe we can start to look, a little bit more forward and be like, okay, like this, we can start to work back in here and we can start to make strides here. But like it it is kind of interesting to me how like it does seem like there are people that are just like fanatically like paranoid about that happening to the point to where it's like the whole world's just going to collapse if the United States like even comes into like second. It's like, okay, like I
Yeah.
just I don't see it, and I think you did a really good job of kind of explaining why like it doesn't mean we're really any less great,
No, I think it means we're going to be better. I mean, I think it's
Yeah,
going to be.
I do too.
I would fear a world
Yeah,
where the United States is the number one uncontested superpower going forward. Our government has
yeah.
become unspeakably evil,
Oh, for
and
sure. Yeah. I
and
mean, we've
I
seen the
think,
product.
yeah, I think other powers that don't surpass ours but rival ours is a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we've had this fear for forever. I remember, I'm an old guy. I, there was this song in the 1970s by this, surprisingly, it was a British band, Paul Revere and the Raiders. It was called Cherokee Nation. I don't know if you ever heard it, but it was a good song, and it was about, technically it was about the Cherokee people, and it's very good about Native American things. But one of the
Hmm.
lines in it is, "And all the beads we once made by hand are
Yep.
nowadays made in Japan." All right,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the idea
Yep.
of the narrative back in the 60s and even into the 70s was the place you buy junk from was
Hmm.
Japan. But if you look at American culture in the 80s,
Yeah.
if you watch almost any movie, pop culture movie in the 80s, the Japanese are going to take over the world. Really. I mean,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I
even by the
remember
late
that.
80s, even the late 80s. One of my favorite Rodney Dangerfield movies was a movie called Back to School. Okay. And
Okay.
some of you
Yeah.
guys may have watched it. And he goes to an economics class, and he starts talking about yeah, he's arguing with the professor, and he goes, "Look, just forget it. They're not making widgets, whatever. Let's just say they're making tape recorders."
Yeah.
And Rodney Dangerfield says, "Tape recorders? Why? The Japs will kill us on the labor costs." Even in the late 80s, they were still doing it. But
Right.
today, Japan, we have great products from Japan. Like
Yeah.
my two cars are Hondas. I mean, admittedly, they're manufactured in the United States, but it's a Japanese make.
Sure.
And they, as far as quality versus price. The Japanese make great stuff, and that's pretty much across the board. It's not the cheap junk that they made in the 70s. Now, to a certain extent today, where do you go to get cheap junk? Well, it's China. Used to be maybe, maybe in the 80s and 90s, it was Hong Kong or Korea. But pretty soon, China's going to be making some really top quality stuff. And we're going to benefit. We're going to benefit from that. And I think more people making more good stuff helps everybody. That's the optimism I have. And the other part of the optimism is what I alluded to earlier, which is the United States is not going to be able to bully the world because the other countries will be too powerful to bully. I mean, in India, in the case of India and China, they're both nuclear powers as well.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be able to use our leverage in the way that we did recently against Russia by taking them out of the Libor system and not being able to engage in international finance or do the secondary sanctions against India. They're not going to work either.
No. On Thursday, when I had done my episode on Thursday, I had talked about also, this idea that, especially as it pertains to Europe, we've been so involved in Europe and we have literally pretty much subsidized a huge portion of Europe. Like we've made them weapons. We've helped them build, a part of their economies. We've helped build their infrastructure. We've helped do so many different things. And it's gotten to a point to where, as I had mentioned, they've become so dependent that through that dependency on us in so many ways, it's pretty much kind of destroyed, places like Britain and Germany and France and it's like there is a conventional thought, especially as it pertains to NATO, like, oh my gosh, like if the United States were to ever pull out, like who's going to protect us? It's like, well, that's the thing, is like, you're going to be better for learning how to protect yourselves than having us do it, because right now you're neutered nations. Your manufacturing ability, your ability to defend yourself, the quality of your militaries, all of these different encompassing things, energy and so many other things, like is pretty much become almost non-existent or so invalid or neutered, to the point to where it's like they can't really muster much. And it's like, but you kind of got to let it fail so that way it can kind of rebuild itself again. But like, I would love to see all these different countries, Tom, kind of like come back into a sense of prosperity and stand on their own. Because why? In my opinion, one, we don't have to protect them at that point, but two, they'll actually be far more viable trading partners down the road, and we can actually benefit from it, as opposed to just sitting there subsidizing everything that they do and them just being kind of like welfare leeches. And I hate to say it that way, but it's a disservice to us, but it's a disservice also to Europe, and I hate to see it. There's a huge portion of me that really hates to see it, considering how much potential those countries have.
I wonder even, I think sort of the Ukraine war kind of revealed a lot in the sense that we haven't been really protecting Europe. They didn't need our protection. I mean, think about it. I mean, I know that the official narrative, narrative is Ukraine, little Ukraine, which is a backward country, can beat Russia. But at the same time, if Ukraine doesn't beat Russia, guess what? They're going to roll through Germany. I'm thinking, well, there's a big, either you got to pick one, right? I mean, either Russia is so incompetent they can't beat Ukraine, or they're really going to beat Ukraine and then they can roll through Europe. And I think that the truth is somewhere in between, that they can beat Ukraine, but they're not going to even be able to beat Poland, let alone Germany. Russia is a middling power when it comes to conventional warfare. I mean, obviously they're a huge superpower when it comes to nuclear weapons, but as far as the ability to roll through with conventional weapons, with tanks and aircraft, they're inferior to Europe. It's funny you said that India might buy the Su-57 over the
Yeah.
F-35. And I was thinking to myself, well, you could probably buy 4 squadrons of Su-57s
Yeah.
for the price of one F-35 because of the way
Right.
they're priced. But so it kind of makes sense. But that's the idea. That Russia is kind of a middling power, and they're not to be dismissed outright. But at the same time, I don't think Europe even needs to spend more than they spend. I mean, I think Trump's efforts. I mean, I was shocked that
5%, I think, is what he's pushing.
5%.
Most
Think
of them
about
can't even get close to that right now.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, one, the United States doesn't spend 5%. If we spend $1 trillion and we have we spend about 5%, I guess. Yeah. $1 trillion, $20 trillion economy.
Yeah.
Roughly. We spend about 5%. So he wants them to spend as much as us. But that's $1 out of $20 going to absolutely nothing unless it's actually protecting against an attack. There was a great essay. I used to make my high school students read it, called That Which Is Seen and That Which Is Not Seen by Frederick Bastiat. And one of the examples he uses is the economic benefits of soldiers, hiring an army. And of course, according to conventional Keynesian theory, what you want is a big army because it helps the economy. Like, think about it. You hire these soldiers, they sit in the barracks, but they also have to buy food, they have to buy provisions, and this circulates in the economy. But Bastiat pointed out that, well, they're sitting in the barracks, and unless they're actually defending the country, all their labor is wasted. They could be doing something productive, and that would actually be making things and making a product that would make people happier and give them more enjoyment. Instead, they're just sitting around doing nothing. And so Trump, by going to Europe and saying you need to spend 5%, which we don't need to spend 5%, they don't need to spend 5% because there's not really a threat. I mean, one of the things that Russia revealed, it's not really a threat, but it was a great gift to the military industrial complex, right? If we can get all of these countries to start spending more on military weapons, well, they'll probably buy more from the United States. They'll probably buy more from the British military producers and other military producers. And it's a great gift to them. But it's an overall, it's a net harm to the average poor person and the net consumer, because they have to take money out of their own pockets and give it to these weapons manufacturers that really don't advance human happiness in any way.
Right. Yeah. It is interesting when you look at so much that surrounds everything going on in Ukraine, especially from 2014 on. And I've listened to several people, give their analysis on it, Daniel Davis, McGregor, and so many other people. And I kind of take it all in and listen to everything that they have to say. And I do find it interesting how there is really kind of this weird situation, right? To where it's just like, as you explained it, okay, is Russia going to, well, let me put it this way. In one mouth or in one side of their mouth, they say Russia is the greatest threat that's ever occurred. But then in the same time, they're also saying, well, look at how incompetent they are. And so it's like you have these people that, and a lot of that really is to try and really boil up the spending and to, really get that cranking of the mick to go forward, to manufacture these weapons, to do all that. But then it's like when you look at the manufacturing capacity and can it all change? Of course it can all change, but we can barely produce enough for our own systems at this juncture in terms of military shells, missiles, rocketry, just basic ammunition. Like it's not even to a point to where within a year we'll even be close to, essentially refilling our stockpiles. But then you look at like Great Britain, for instance, their naval fleet is basically it's destitute. I mean, most of their ships aren't even seaworthy. The amount of people in their military can fill, I think, a football stadium. I think they have like 70. It's somewhere around like 76,000 military personnel. That's what they have. Like and then you cut that down by like a fifth, and then of that 1/5, or that 1/5 is actual combat personnel, right? So it's everybody has this idea of militaries of like, oh, like you have a 1,000,000-man military, so like that means 1,000,000 war fighters. That's not how that works, and a lot of people tend to overlook that too. So when you go through and you evaluate Britain and Germany and so many of these other countries, now Poland, they have squared themselves away, but a lot of that is because they are kind of doing their own thing, right? Like they just kind of took their initiative, did their own thing. And so it's interesting when you do look at these different facets, you know, like, yeah, I mean, we could be saving a lot of money by not subsidizing all of this. And, you know, telling them like, oh yeah, like we're 100%, we're going to protect you guys. Okay. And then we sit there and we don't actually really afford them anything at all. Like, yeah, we gave them weapons and we gave them assurances, but honestly, that assurance is about as worthy as like writing it on a piece of toilet paper and wiping your ass with it. Honestly, like it doesn't really constitute a whole lot. I would argue, as I'm sure a lot of other more libertarian, liberty-minded people would, is like it would be better for us to actually come back to our borders and invest in our country and our borders and our actual defense versus trying to do all this, especially when you have everything else that's taking place as it pertains to their actual military capabilities and subsidizing. I guess just it's not even mediocrity; it's really just like just not present. And there's a it just it blows my mind the amount of effort that they put in to really just like inflate something that really just doesn't exist at this point, especially in terms of a threat. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, where is the incentive? You know, and I'll just go to Russia here real quick. Where is the incentive for them to even want to go into really anything beyond you know, like Ukraine, as it will, and I say Ukraine because that's currently where they are. But it's like if they went into Western Ukraine, if they went into Poland, if they went into all these other places, it would be a tragedy for them because they would be fighting resistance all along the way. There's no incentive, there's no Russians, no nothing for them to bring into the fold. There's no economic advantage. There's no military advantage. You're just expending resources far beyond the means of reasonable effort. And, you know, when you break it down and you look at how they're kind of conducting their fight, you know, a lot of people are hung up on this idea of like, oh, well, they, you know, 3 days to take Ukraine. It's like, okay, well, that was also something manufactured by a dumbass that like, I believe it was Kelly who was like, oh, like 3 days to take Ukraine. It's like, well, that was never the objective. The whole reason they went to Ukraine was to push for the treaty or the accord that they were about to sign until Boris Johnson and company decided to go in there and be like, you know what, Ukraine, like we can fund you. we can help you win this war. And now you have the current conflagration that exists now. And it's insane. Like the amount of effort they're putting into just blowing up all of these conversations. And where has it gotten us, Tom? You know, I would say in a fairly destitute position along with Europe.
Yeah, if you look at we spent what $300 billion on Ukraine alone.
Yeah, that's
$1,000 per person in America. That's I mean, you think about how many people in your family. You'd probably use $3,000-4,000 to do something actually positive rather than promote a war that goes for nothing. And same thing with Israel. We probably spent less in total on Israel, but the official sticker price of, I think it's 12 or 13 billion is really understating it because we've provided all kinds of naval assets and other military assets that have cost us additional billions of dollars, but still it's money that American consumers could have used to, you know, maybe make an extra mortgage payment or, you know, take a college course or, you know, things that would be useful. And
Or
instead,
disaster relief, as
they
long
went to
as
these
you
wars.
don't say the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. Yeah, you might get kicked out. Yeah. Especially if you oppose the Israeli war.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I don't know, man. It's really interesting to see where we spread our money out, and we just like are. Well, I say we. This government is just not interested in actually, in my opinion, helping Americans, and that was part of my rant on Thursday. Was really like we've become second or third class citizens in our own country. Like we 100% are taking a back seat, and they will justify anything and everything to ensure that we come last, especially as it pertains to all of the tax dollars that we pay in. So it's kind of a grim picture, and I hope it gets better, but I don't know. I think time will tell. And I think the shift that you talked about earlier, I think it will be a good thing. Honestly, it'll maybe put some hubris in check, and maybe we can overcome some of these obstacles in a reasonable way.
Yes, assuming adults are in charge, which
Yeah.
sadly recently is not a valid assumption. But I mean,
Yeah.
things may change. I mean, but we don't. I mean, I don't see Trump as the adult in the room.
No.
I mean, he's
No.
I know for those who think he's doing a great job. I mean, I would ask you look a little more at the detail. Look at his tariffs. Even if you like his tariffs, which I don't, but even if I liked his tariffs, the fact that they're on again, off again, on again, off again, that's bad for business. That's just bad for business. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have a plan, like the whole, it's the art of the deal. Well, if you spoil all the business beforehand, and the economy has so far weathered it okay.
Yeah.
But he's so helter-skelter and so vacillating that it creates that kind of business uncertainty that we did see in the Great Depression under Roosevelt. Now, I'm not comparing him to Roosevelt. I'm not saying we're going to go into the Great Depression. I don't think we are. But to a lesser extent, maybe to a much lesser extent, to be fair to Trump, I do see that kind of business uncertainty. And that's going to hurt business. And it's going to hurt economic growth, both here and abroad.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was just looking at, as you were talking about that, I was just kind of scrolling through the comment section. I think we got a vote, Tom. I think this is our in. Apparently, we need to run on a ticket for something. So, you know, I don't have the political chops, I don't think. But look, I would run with you any day of the week, man.
I actually today I just lost a race. I ran for an at-large position on the Libertarian National Committee. I lost by 2 votes, which is okay. I'm fine with it.
Sure.
Because one, nobody knew me 2 weeks ago. Like
that's pretty good for somebody they don't know.
Well, that's the way I look at it. And I only ran again in the last 2 weeks. A couple of vacancies opened up, and I actually had planned to run for a national position in the party next year at Grand Rapids. So I got my name out there, and this was my plan to go for Grand Rapids anyway.
Yeah.
I saw the openings. I said, I'll go for it and introduce myself to the existing Libertarian National Committee.
Yeah, there you go.
And so I did that, and I think I did pretty well. Nobody came back at me and said I made a fool of myself, which
hey,
maybe a first in my life. And no, I had a good time running and writing letters and to the LNC, and I'll run again, and we'll see what happens. I think I'll do better in Grand Rapids.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, dude. And honestly, like, yeah, I think I do think there is an accomplishment factor there. I mean, being somebody that, like you said, like 2 weeks ago, like not really anybody knew you, and just missing out on 2 votes. I mean, dude, that says something. I haven't even ever thought of running for a position. I don't even know what that would look like. It may be a dumpster fire. I'll be honest with you. It may be a dumpster fire, but I think it's great that you're going to give it another go, and I really hope that I hope you're able to cinch that position, because I think you'd be a great person for that position. You've got it all figured out, man, and you got my vote and my support for sure. So.
Sounds good.
So, all right. Well, Tom, I appreciate you coming out tonight and having this conversation and being able to share once again, some knowledge and all of that. Is there anything coming down the pipeline that you're going to be writing soon?
I have 2 ideas. I say ideas. I haven't really written much on them.
Sure.
One, I want to cover the immigration issue, the cultural argument on immigration. I'm generally speaking, I'm going to use the term, but those of you who come out on the other side, don't freak out, because I don't mean what you think I'm going to say. I'm generally open borders. And in that sense, I don't mean I think criminals should be able to jump jurisdictions and come to the United States.
Sure.
I think I'd like to see us back in the old system of, and I don't mean Ellis Island, I mean the old system of American policy, where the states ran immigration, and they basically state by state made the rules. And if you wanted to come, generally they came to New York because New York was the most open. And New York said, look, if you want to come here, you just have to answer 2 yes questions. And the first question, it was, you don't have a criminal record, right? And he said, yes, I don't. Okay. And the second question was, do you have a means of supporting yourself? And there were 3 ways to do that. Either you had a job offer, you had money that you could live off of until you found a job. And at that time, it was $50. Now, $50 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you put it in purchasing powers, it was roughly $3,000 to $4,000. Because keep in mind, $50 was 2.5 ounces of gold. And, so, today, if you put that in terms of gold, that would be about 10 grand, but not 10 grand. It would be about 7 grand, but it was roughly in purchasing powers, it was $3,000 to $4,000, enough to basically rent an apartment, buy food, and live for a month. Or you had a sponsor. Yeah. If you had one of those 3, if you said yes to any one of those 3, you could come. Otherwise they sent you on the boat back. I mean, that's basically what I was looking at. That's basically my view. But the argument against it is the cultural argument. And by culture, they're not really, most of the people who say culture, they're not really very specific. And that's part of the problem. The first, and I'm not one of these guys, but a lot of people who say, well, it'll ruin our culture. The open borders purists, of which I'm not one, will say, oh, that just means you think that the dark-skinned people are Untermenschen and you're a Nazi. And it's like, no, most of the time they have something in their mind that's specific. They mean they bring higher crime rates, or they take jobs, or there's a couple of different arguments. And I just want to address those cultural arguments. That's one article. And the other one is kind of a riff on what I just published. And I haven't written a word of it, but I want to kind of cover the same ground, but in a different style. And I've tentatively called it Interview with a Billionaire. And it's a sort of interview with a fictional billionaire who is, shall we say, more candid than he ought to be about how he does things and how to. So I would cover much of the same ground as the Libertarian Institute article, but the style of writing would be different. And
for sure.
I don't know when they'll be coming out. It'll probably be a while for both, because certainly for
Yeah.
the Interview with the Billionaire, because I want to get it right. Satire is difficult to write, but I've written some, and I think it's done
Yeah.
well. I
I do
did
like
one,
satire.
yeah, I did one piece that was one of my most circulated ever pieces. I did a satire piece on the battles of Lexington and Concord from the perspective of the mass media today, the gun controlling mass media today, about how military extremists with their military style weapons refused to surrender their weapons. It got everywhere. It got everywhere. And even
Yeah.
Snopes had to do the fact checking site had to do a fact check on it, because some people were thinking it was a serious claim that over 200 people in the Boston area were killed in a riot by militias
Yeah.
in modern day America.
Yeah.
But it was one of my better satires. It was kind of a group piece. Yeah, I don't take sole credit for it, but
Sure.
it's hard to do. But I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I've done it in a couple of cases, and it's worked out all right. But it's not something I can just kind of jot down and proof once or twice and then send it off. It's got to have the
Sure.
right tone. So that may be more down the road. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, for sure.
that's what I've got in mind. But let me do one other thing and plug my podcast again,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is Blue Collar Podcast, YouTube/T Eddlem again.
Yep.
So there, Eddlem. And I think that's all I got to say.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and I'll make sure to drop that in the description below too, when I go through and do a little bit of editing in the description and all of that after we finish up. It's always a great time having you on. I really appreciate the
Thanks.
conversation,
It's
and
always fun.
yeah, I always look forward to it, because I feel like the conversation, we do a pretty good job staying on economics, but I do like the fact that we can kind of just, hit a few other areas. It never feels wrong, I guess is what I'm saying.
I
Whereas,
have a broad background. I've written about a lot of different things, but
yeah,
let's face it, for the Libertarian Institute, I'm not going to beat Scott Horton and Kyle Anzalone on foreign policy. All right. I'm not going to
yeah,
beat Joseph
right.
Sullis Mullins on China.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
yeah,
staying right in my lane,
yep,
So
yeah, for
there we
sure.
go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's always good. So if you have a couple minutes, I'll chat with you.
Sure.
I'm gonna hit the outro song. That'll give me a minute to run off and do something here quick, and then I will be right back. So
All right.
all right, well, let's. I will take us out of here, and I'll let the outro song play, and I will be back in just a jiffy.